1. This happened a few semesters ago, where I was taking a course in urban design. Everyone was grouped in threes, but one of my group members wanted to join another group with her friend, so I ended up with one other person. Not sure why the professor thought this was okay, but I wasn't too worried because I was fairly confident in my ability to do the work. The course incorporated previous studio courses to tie together in a massive topic of urban planning, which included architectural design, environmental sustainability, urban infrastructure, and historic preservation. I tried to brainstorm with my partner on which direction we should go. My idea was focused on residentials, as housing would address a huge demand here in New York City. However, my partner seemed content on making the project about industrial buildings, so I focused there. We brainstormed on different ideas, but got the impression that he just wanted me to take the lead, as he mostly agreed with not giving much input. Weeks went by, and I constantly updated my partner on the progress via WhatsApp, while rarely getting any update or feedback from him. It annoyed me a bit, but I was still confident in my work, which was enough to get us through the next checkpoint during our next presentation. At some point during the semester, I got a really terrible kidney stone. It wasn't from junk food or a poor diet. In fact, it was from eating too much black beans and chickpeas. As a side note, I asked ChatGPT to give me a list of food that I use to come up with a healthy meal plan, that meets my macro needs. I did feel way better with my new diet, but it eventually led to me having my worst kidney stone of my life that put me in the ER. I was on all kinds of pain meds and had to stay there for several nights. But it didn't end there. The stone was so big that it got stuck. I needed surgery to put in a stent. Don't look up how they put it in, it still gives me nightmares. I had to wait several more weeks and endure pissing deep red blood daily and having yet another surgery to remove the stent. Before finally recovering. Throughout this whole time, I managed to put in some work into my project. I was surprised to learn that my partner did absolutely nothing and waited for me to continue my work. Like, what the actual hell? To make it worse, I learned that he tried to present my work as his own. How can people be like that? I emailed the professor about my situation. I explained how I did all the work so far and sent him screenshots of the chat as well as my project file, which includes all the history logs. The professor reminded me that during the final submission, everyone had to put their initials on the slides of the work that they worked on. Okay, got it. Luckily, I was recovered and ready to present my work. I left out the initials as it wasn't required for presentation, only the final submission. I felt the need to see what he'd do. I even tried to cut him some slack and give him some talking points on the parts that I had allowed him to claim as his own. Even though it was fully my work, he didn't. He kept cutting me off during presentation to talk about my project as if he had anything to do with it. He mostly repeated the same information I'd mentioned, while not bringing anything of value to point out. The final presentation had several judges who were comprised of local professionals in high-level positions within the industry. The conversation was always directed at me, so I had a good feeling that everyone understood that I did most of the work, as I knew all the intimate knowledge of the parts. Then came the last day to submit our work. The final slides included my initials on every single page. Apparently, my partner missed that part about the initials and also submitted an older version of my work. A few weeks go by, and I hit him up asking what he got. I was surprised to learn that he actually passed with a C+. He was surprised to hear that I received an A-, and promptly said that he'll have a talk with the professor on why he received such a low grade. Honestly, why are people like this? Anyway, not sure if it's malicious compliance, but I did do everything as instructed, and ended up having one hell of a semester. Did I mention that I had morphine for the first time during my ER visit? Hellfreezer's note: please don't use ChatGPT for health advice or anything like that. This might be becoming a bit of a cliche at this point, but while one day AI might actually be genuinely intelligent and be able to intuit your intents and your needs, it's not there yet. It's interesting. There is some use to it. I use a little bit in my own work as well. Probably not forever, but for now it's useful. But it's a tool, and you have to check the results yourself. And a bit of junk food now and again never hurt anybody. 2. So a little backstory. I work for an internet provider company as a lead in the internet repair department. This means that I get calls from agents who work there that either need help with the situation because they're stuck and don't know what to do, or when a customer escalates a call asking for a supervisor, manager, or someone above them. My department mainly handles internet issues like being offline, outages, replacing equipment, etc. So the other day was like any other. I'm getting emails from clients needing equipment transferred from one account to another, scheduling a technician for customers who refuse to do any troubleshooting, and the list goes on. One of my main calls is an agent asking me to run a special tool that corrects the speed being sent to a customer. This usually happens when a customer upgrades or downgrades their internet speed, and it doesn't take right away. And this only takes a couple of minutes. This comes in later. On this particular day, I get a call from an agent that says her customer wants to speak to a supervisor because he is not getting the speeds he pays for. This happens quite a lot, usually because most people don't understand how the internet works and all the factors that come into the result of a speed test. This can include a lot of things like how far away you are from your router, if you're testing on Wi-Fi or are directly connected, how many devices you are currently using, and even things like how your residence is built, because stone and concrete do not allow Wi-Fi signals to travel through. When I looked at the customer's account, I see that he is currently subscribed to 100 megabits per second. Our normal plans are 300, 500, and a gig, which is 1000. I asked the agent what results he was getting, and she told me it was 437 megabits per second, which is way over what he is paying for. I told the agent to go ahead and transfer him to me, and I'll continue the discussion. Once the customer gets to me, Darren, I introduce myself and ask how I can help. Darren immediately begins yelling and cursing at me about how he is not getting what he pays for, and is extremely upset, and even demanding credit to his account because of this. I begin to try and apologize to Darren, and explain that speed test results can vary based on certain conditions. He cuts me off and states that he is recording the call, and will be posting everything I say on social media. I tell him that is fine, as all our calls are recorded for quality assurance purposes as well, and everything will be documented. Darren then proceeds to continue cursing, stating that this is unacceptable, and I should be ashamed of myself for working for a company that does not provide the product people are paying for. While he rants on and on, I noticed that he had recently changed his internet plan from 500 megabits per second to 100 2 days ago. Now, as I mentioned before, sometimes the internet changes don't happen right away, and we have to run a specific tool to fix it. This can happen when the modem has not been reset to reflect these changes. I try to tell Darren that he is receiving more than what he is paying for, and again, he cuts me off, stating that he will be reporting us to the FCC, BBB, and filing a lawsuit about this, all while recording our conversation. Now, normally I wouldn't care, and I'd allow the speed to continue going through until the system automatically fixes it, but his attitude and rude demeanor made me feel otherwise. Cue the malicious compliance. I respond to Darren saying, "Sir, you are absolutely right, and I am so sorry you are not receiving the speeds you are paying for. I will get this fixed right away." Now, this plan that Darren was on, the 100 speed, is a plan that only certain customers can get if they are financially unable to make normal payments, meaning he had to apply for this program to be approved, based on his low income. So I run the fix tool on his internet and reduce the speed down to 100 as he requested. I then ask him how his speed results are now. Darren then responds,
"It's even worse than it was before. What kind of trick are you trying to pull on me?"
I responded, "Sir, you told me you were not getting the speeds you were paying for, and you were right. You recently applied for financial assistance to be downgraded to 100, and I fixed that for you. It was absolutely wrong of us to be sending you 500 when you were only paying for 100. I apologize for the inconvenience." After a few minutes of silence, Darren then muffled to himself,
"This is ridiculous,"
and proceeded to disconnect the call. I left notes on his account so any future agent would know what had happened that day, and that he was not entitled to any credit on his bill. All I can say is be careful what you complain about. 3. Several years ago, I worked for an aerospace manufacturing company. You already know this one, Adwell, as a setup operator, meaning my job was to arrive before shift start, usually 3 or 4 hours early, make sure all 5-axis mills were calibrated, the ATC, automatic tool changer, magazines were all loaded correctly, and the tooling was in good condition. Nothing dulled or broken. If there was damaged tooling, part of the process was removing the carrier, replacing the cutter, and resetting the cutter height with a gauge, making it so that the tip of every cutter is in the exact same position for that particular holder every time. After being there for several years, the company eventually gets acquired, and new management comes in. I am there from 3 or 4 in the morning until 1 or 2 p.m., sometimes earlier if a new job gets added to the floor. Schedule works fine for me, I get to beat traffic both ways, and pay is a bit higher due to the differential. After a few weeks, it gets noticed that I constantly leave early and always run over on hours, so they implement a new policy. Work starts at 9 a.m. and runs till 5. You have to be on the floor ready to go when the clock hits 9. I try to explain to my new boss exactly why I leave early, but he's more concerned about the numbers and cash flow than what I actually do there. So fine, you want 9 to 5, I'll work 9 to 5. Instead of punching in at 4, I chill in my car until 8:45 and roll into the building. Wait exactly till 9 and punch, then head to the floor. Roll up to the first HAZ on the line and hit the E-stop, which shuts the machine down instantly. Tell the operator this hasn't been set up yet and they need to wait till it's ready. Head down the line and punch everyone I pass, telling them the same thing. Not ready, go wait. I start at the end of the line with my platinum gauges and start calibrating the entire magazine, verifying everything is there in spec and ready to be used. Get the magazine done and home the probe, so my machine knows where it is in 3D space, and move to the next. That was about 40 minutes since I took my time. Meanwhile, the rest of the line is dead in the water. Nobody can do any work until their deck passes calibration and is certified to use. I'm partway through the second unit when I have my new manager breathing down my neck. Why is nothing running? What's going on? Etc., etc., etc. I sit back in my haunches and calmly explain to him, this is my job, the one that until today I used to come in hours early to do, as not to mess with the production schedule. I need to get this done. Should be ready to start the line in another 5 or 6 hours. I'm told to unlock and get the line moving. No can do. None of these machines are checked, and I'm not signing off on the certification until I'm done. Anything not certified is an instant QC reject. Choose, run the line and reject 1 million in parts, or let me finish and lose 1 million in production time, and I go back to my old schedule tomorrow. The plant got paid a day to do nothing. I got the new boss off my back, and he got reamed all to hell for losing a day's production. 4. Background. I joined this Japanese-based company a few years ago as a production assistant. I wasn't assisting anyone in production. I was the only American, the only one fully fluent in both languages, still looking for a better line of work. So I ended up helping everyone else in some fashion or another. Well, I also had to do my own work, of course, but when things shipped behind schedule, it was made out to be my fault. I helped our shipping manager send things out and receive them, count, quality check them, weigh the boxes, palletize them, etc. Our sales manager, the man himself in question, constantly asked me to double-check his emails, so he sounded more natural and professional, and even had me get involved on numerous occasions to help him save face or placate customers. Event. From the time that I started, we'd been struggling to keep time because of inventory issues. These issues were both because our customer didn't keep accurate numbers and neither did we. not just for the parts they sent us for assembly, but also for the boxes we used to package the order before shipping. Boxes I used, and only I used. Boxes I was not allowed to order, but had to ask Mr. Sales Manager to order for me. Well, he would forget to order them, and then I'd remind him, and he'd forget again, only ordering days later. It happened enough times that our customer finally demanded we count up our inventory. I made an Excel sheet, made it legible in both English and Japanese, color-coded areas of concern, and I also added everything we used in the office, from boxes only used by shipping to gloves, to the parts from our biggest customer, as they were demanding we count. Everything got counted, everything was put in that document, and I made sure to include a field of when it was last counted. Result? Suddenly we're making good time and getting ahead, and I don't have to worry about boxes. Now, this entire time, Mr. Sales was working on a 20-page document that proved our president didn't do his job, trying to report him to the Japanese Home Office and get him fired. My two co-workers got a glimpse of it and saw there were sections of it all in US too, bad-mouthing our work, trying to make it seem like only Mr. Sales was on the up and up. Finally, the Japanese parent company sent someone. This guy is, unknown to all of us, the son-in-law of the company owner of a family-owned and run company. Pretty common in Japan. Well, only I and our shipping manager learned this, since we actually talked to the guy. But Mr. Sales likes to treat him like a goof and poke fun at him. This guy Japan sent to us. He carefully plans meetings for us while Mr. Sales is out of the office, and interviews all of us about what's been up at our USA branch. Our late shipments come up, and my pattern of shipping late and insulting our biggest customer with my laziness. There's also reports of me being on my phone too much, preoccupied watching videos, or listening to music and not working. I start pulling out emails and the inventory I was told to create. I show him the inventory history and my emails asking for Mr. Sales to do his job from before it was made. I show him the ship address dates and the differences before and after I made the inventory file. Fallout. A friend of mine in Japan is suicidal, and I'd lost contact with him a few times. I decided to go to Japan to help him out, try to live there. But at best I have 6 months of savings. This means I have to leave the company. I know this guy from Japan is going to arrive, and all Mr. Sales' delusions of being USA branch president will die. But I couldn't be there to see it. So I went to Japan. Spent my 6 months successfully. Friend re-entered college to chase his dreams instead of being a dead-eyed salaryman. He's on the mend, and returned to the US a few months ago. I get in contact with the company, and they rehire me. Now that I'm here, I learn Mr. Sales quit shortly after I left. But not before he heard every last thing he had told me he would say between us, and take all but a literal dump on my desk. I checked my old inventory file. He'd zeroed it out. The company has been shipping late again, hired a new guy to do my job, that's been getting parts returned to fix errors numerous times. Something that only happened to me once. Do they want me to fix any of that? No. Here's a book of local businesses. Call them. Drum up customers. Oh, okay. Can do. Thanks for the paycheck for doing something so easy that won't ever work, I guess. 5. About 10 years ago, I worked at what you would think would be a dream job. I was a traveling chocolate salesman for a small family-owned chocolate company. If you told 8-year-old me, I would have crapped myself. I get hired in late summer, and it's my first big boy job after college. Ah, gee whiz. The guy who interviews me the first time is the owner's nephew, nice young guy who I am still friends with to this day. Interview goes well, and I'm invited back for a second, this time with the owner, who is the most intimidating man I've ever met. I can tell in the first few minutes that this dude is wild, but the interview goes well and I get hired. I'll never forget accepting the job. The owner shook my hand and said, "I'm going to break it to you," with an evil grin. Definitely a red flag, but I had been job hunting for so long I just went with it. So, I get sent off to a state fair with his nephew who ran the outside sales portion of the company. Outside sales there focused on working state fairs, trade shows, and any other place you could set up a booth to sell chocolate by the pound. Nephew is an absolute boss and a pleasure to work for. But the state fairs were terrible work. 14-hour days for 2 weeks straight, little to no breaks, and on your feet the whole time. By the end, you have no energy left, and just want to go home. They would send new hires there to see if they could hack it. I make it through, and have to go on a trip with the owner the very next week. Basically, out of the pan and in the fire. I'm stuck in a truck with the owner for a 14-hour round trip to Colorado, while delivering product and making cold calls on the way. This was where I really found out how crazy the owner was. Dude was on me like flies on crab 24/7. Everything I did was criticized, and he was basically always yelling or lecturing me. But at the end of the day, he would build me up and talk about how great I was. Serious mind games. I had one night to escape the guy while in Colorado because I had family there, and I went to dinner with them. Cousin and I get T-boned on the way to drop me back off at our hotel. I was about 2 feet from being directly hit by the other driver and would have died. Was called a pussy the next morning, when I could barely get out of bed for work. I could literally go on for days about the crazy stuff I've seen and heard this guy do. And there are probably people on here who will know who I'm talking about, because he's just that wild. Somehow, though, over the year I worked there, the guy really took a liking to me. It didn't save me from being yelled at, and honestly made it worse because I worked closely with him more. His nephew left for obvious reasons, and I replaced him as the outside sales manager. There was a good 6 months where I rarely saw him, and we were breaking previous year's sales at every show we went to. After about 8 months in as director, state fair season was coming around, and I knew it was going to be rough. We did 3 state fairs each year, and the last one was the worst because owner travels out with us, and he is the boss for the show rather than myself. We struggled through the first 2, and the last one was the worst 2 weeks of my life, and it's not even close. During the fair, myself and my normal crew had considered flying home unannounced, because the owner was so awful to all of us. We even half joked about making him disappear. Somehow we make it through, and get to go home. My next show was supposed to be a breeze. It was a festival of mostly old people, and was considered a vacation to the last director. On my way down to the show, I get a call from the owner that he feels bad for me and wants to come help at that show. My stomach sank because I was literally unhealthy with stress at this point. I called the lady who ran operations a complete saint, I loved her, and told her that he can't come down or I will lose it. She can't do anything, and he is definitely coming down to help. I held on to that job because it was more money than I could possibly make anywhere else at the time, and I felt like I couldn't leave. Plus, the owner has spent the last year brainwashing me. He would break me down and build me back up, and I was weirdly dependent on it. I was so broken that I had to pull over off the highway just to stop for a while. My brother was working with me and driving the other truck down to the show. We stopped at McDonald's and tried to eat, but I wasn't hungry. My brother being there is probably the only reason I was able to think clearly. Neither of us wanted to deal with the owner for another 2 weeks. I looked at my brother and asked him if he was down to just bail and deal with being unemployed later. My older brother is known as the Dude for his Lebowski-like demeanor, so we both said, "Screw it, let's go bowling." And that was it. We drove the rest of the way to the show, unloaded the booth, and then drove the small truck home in the middle of the night. I got all my stuff out of my office and left my key to the factory and company credit card on the owner's desk, with a note that said, "I quit. You are going to die alone if you don't learn how to treat other people." Or something along those lines. Blocked everyone from the company on my phone so they couldn't try to bring me back. That was it. Never heard from the owner again. The show started next morning with no booth set up. Owner got my note the same morning and apparently flew out the door when he figured out what was happening. I've talked to other people from the company, and they said I actually changed him, and he's not as bad as he used to be. I am apparently a legend there and receive discounts at his stores if they know who I am. I should also mention that the owner was such a legendary a-hole that he called his son weak while being wheeled onto an ambulance after he tried to unalive himself. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge's Ice Cream, episode 379. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Various links in the description, including my second channel if you'd be so good as to go over there and subscribe. We're trying to get that one monetized too. But apart from that, no other business today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, what's your current obsession? Mine's pretty easy. I dip in and out now and again, but I've really developed a bit of a focus on Beetlejuice the musical. So much so that I've discovered that on the music section of YouTube, they actually have the demos with all the cut songs and the original demo versions. And it's really fun and really interesting. And Eddie Perfect is quite a good singer. I didn't actually realize he sang, but he's quite a good singer. So that's my current thing. And I haven't seen the new movie yet, but I do want to see that. So hopefully at some point I'll get around to watching that. But let me know what yours are in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Revenge's Ice Cream 376. And was about if you were going to hide stuff around the house to, for people you care about to find later, what would it be? And today's answer comes from Annie Northman. And Annie's answer was, just hide stuff around like little babies or something to annoy them. I do know you can buy those large bags, because I think one of my moderators did it, of teeny tiny babies, teeny tiny plastic babies. See, candy would be nice if it's someone you like, but candy does expire, so it's probably a bad idea, especially if there's things that might not be found for a very long time afterwards. And if it's someone you don't like, I don't know, gummy dicks. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.